Thank you very much. Good afternoon. The session after the tea break. It's called Sustainability Beyond Green Chemistry. Mr. Sanjay, Kumar, Dr. Madan, Gopal, Dr. Shankar, Ghosh. So, just to set the agenda, across the entire spectrum of the health sector, from pharma companies to hospitals, thinking green has emerged and very strongly placed itself as an urgent imperative. The options for the pharmaceutical companies are to look at how they can take to green chemistry and make medicine making more sustainable, while the challenges for the water and power intensive hospitals and operation theaters is to realign the goals and get more planet friendly. So this panel will examine the emerging issues for India's health and pharma sectors to get insights into how governments and the industry are planning for this paradigmatic shift, keeping environment center stage and under the broad rubric of One Health. Mr. Sanjay Kumar, to start with you, what really are the key elements of green chemistry?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Dasgupta and Dr. PHFI for having this session. It's quite remarkable that sustainability is getting a center piece in such a high celebrated forum. And before I address the green chemistry, I just want to address the larger issue that climate change is here. We saw in 23 across the globe, from North America to the continental Europe, to the parts of Asia, including here in India, some of the devastating effect of the climate change. And if 23 was a new normal, we have got off to a very bad start in 2024 with the global sea surface temperature and the surface air temperature up to above +2 sigma level. This is very alarming, and we must both as a global community, nation state, public and private enterprises must address this issue at a very priority level. Globally, we have set ourselves a target that for this planet to remain habitable, we can't go beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade of global warming over the pre-industrial area. And for that, we have our science and the evidence-based target that the planet must adhere to, and everyone in the defined nationally determined contribution contribute to the decarbonization of the planet, as we have seen. In that context, we in the pharmaceutical industry have various levers to contribute to. Green chemistry is just one of the 3 pillars that we think can go about in decarbonizing and the pharmaceutical sector and contribute to this, addressing this menace of climate change. Within the green chemistry, there are 2 specific technology or the chemistry which is of interest. One is biocatalysis. Now that is a nature gift to human, and how we can apply those in some of the chemical reactions, which is a very harsh condition of a high temperature, high pressures. It has potential to just bring down the energy requirement for every reactions by a scale which could be 1/10 to 100th, and thereby minimizing the carbon footprint. That's number one. A lot of other industries, like in FMCG company, detergents company, who use enzymes, etc., to lower such requirement and reducing their carbon footprint, their environmental footprint. The second technology is the flow chemistry and the flow technology, and a continuous manufacturing platform, which is utilized quite heavily in oil and gas industry, which the pharmaceutical company can directly imbibe. What it means is the miniaturization of the reaction in a very small physical footprint. So what you can do in a large factory, you can do it within this room. Again, this cutting down the scale from 1/10 to 100. And this has a large potential to decarbonize the pharmaceutical sectors and the chemical sector in general. But I think we have to expand this view beyond just the green chemistry as the topic suggests. And we can think about the new upcoming technology that is becoming available and being implemented in the energy sector, in the mobility sector, and how can that be utilized to decarbonize pharmaceutical sector. One of the things that is emerging is green hydrogen and its subsequent applications. Green hydrogen can be produced using any form of renewable energy and using electrolyzer to split the water to get to the green hydrogen, thereby having no carbon footprint on this way, versus the conventional process using a fossil fuel to get to the hydrogen. And hearing from the government and the policy, and that shows the government appetite, we have a very encouraging signs from the political leadership in the country, both on renewable energy and on the green hydrogen, which is taken as a mission. Now, the focus in last 20 seconds I will take is how do we move beyond mobility application of green hydrogen into a basic chemicals industrial feedstock for which we are so much dependent on China, for example, today. How can we leverage that to be not just become a self-sufficient, but also having a complete sustainable solution for pharmaceutical sector so that we recapitulate the India as a pharmacy hub of the world to a hub known for the sustainable pharmaceutical manufacturing in the country.
So taking that cue, Dr. Madan Gopal, you have a very long career in policy, currently at the National Health Systems Resource Center, earlier at Niti Aayog. What exactly are the policy imperatives as far as both central and state governments are concerned vis-a-vis decarbonizing the pharma industry?
Thank you, Rajib, and I will take what my previous panelist has mentioned about how the green and other panelists can be, how the green and renewable energy can be taken forward. I would be just focusing on the 12 principles for green chemistry, which I would like to highlight. Because if we have to do something, some change, we have to at least see that these 12 principles, I think many people would be knowing about these 12 principles, but let me reiterate that one of the things is how we can prevent waste. Because prevention of waste is very important rather than treating the waste. We see that how the waste can be minimized. The second thing is maximize the atoms. Whatever atoms we are using, we maximize that thing. Then design less hazardous synthesis, chemical synthesis. As you have mentioned that the 1/10 of the thing, that means we are slowly thinking in that direction. Then design the chemicals and produce which are very safe. We have to see that how we design that thing. Then use very safer saturates and other things which we are using. It should be very safer. We have to see that how the emergency efficiency is maximized. Use of the emergency is maximized and we use less energy for all these things. Then the use of renewable feedstocks, which we have already mentioned. Then avoid chemical derivatives which are there. We try to avoid chemical derivatives as much as possible. We are trying to, if you look at the public health systems in the country, we are trying to see that how the chemical insecticides are being replaced by organic derivatives, so that the utilization of this chemical derivatives also this. Then they are used as catalyst, not as chemist thing. That's another principle which is there. We have to see that whether we are moving in that direction or not. Then we are designed for degradation of the materials and other things. Then analyze in real-time basis, whatever things which we are doing, we should be able to analyze in real-time basis so that we take appropriate action at the appropriate time. Then minimize the potential for any contamination and other things. See, these are the 12 principles on which the green chemistry in the pharmaceutical industry happens. Apart from that, we do have some guidelines in the policy. The Central Pollution Control Board, they have released guidelines, and adhering to that guidelines is one thing, and reducing the waste is one thing. So instead of just adhering and saying that the pollution guidelines are there, that will take care of that thing for environment and as well as the other area, that's another aspect. That means we have to focus on reducing the generation of waste. Moreover, in the MSME policy also, the zero defect, zero effect. That kind of mechanism is there. So we are trying to see that how, when we are making things, how we can have a zero effect, a zero defect and zero effect. That kind of thing also could be there. Then there are many other critical areas like bicatalyst and other things. It would be just a repetition as my previous speaker has mentioned. But we have to see that how the circular economy can be utilized in the pharmaceutical sector. That's another area where we see that how when we are moving towards greener and cleaner things. So at least we should focus on the circular economy, which marks from a shift from the linear to a models of consumption and disposal. So we see that lastly regulatory and the economic incentives are very important, and we see that how the existing policies and the guidance which are there, which can be leveraged to take the things forward towards a greener chemistry and sustainable pharmaceutical products. We'll stop here.
Yes, thank you. And we will take these conversation points forward. Dr. Shankar Ghosh, you have, to use the cricketing jargon, you have excelled in all formats of the game, from primary health care to transnational advocacy. So in terms of the patient care activities, whether it's in a primary health center to a tertiary care, a medical college, or a high-end corporate hospital, how do you look at sustainability issues, and how does it intersect with green chemistry?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dasgupta. So let me start with a brief anecdote. This anecdote was told in the American Society of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene in Boston a couple of years back. And this was told by an entrepreneur who was expanding on hospital bases in the primary, secondary, and tertiary level in two countries, Senegal and Rwanda. He was a third-generation entrepreneur, and his grandfather had started this initiative. So he said that when my grandfather had started the initiative of hospitals, there were two P's that he was interested about. One was profit, the second was patients. And not necessarily the two departments who managed the profit and the patients talked very well to each other. Then he said that over the next two generations, we have become smarter. We now have three P's. We do not say the word profit. We say productivity. We talk of productivity. We do not talk of patients because we understand that patients are no more standalone solutions that we need to provide to. We have to talk about people. So we talk about productivity, we talk about people, and then there is a third thing which everyone is now focused on is pollution. So from profit and patients, the journey has now moved on to productivity, people, and pollution. So how do we come to the next generation? Now there is a very simple way of thinking about it. We do not need to go into very details of what needs to be done, but there needs to be a structure around which the green hospitals need to be built. So there is a chain of hospitals who have committed a pledge to make themselves green across India, and this is called the HELP Network, Healthy Environment Leadership Platform. There are various hospitals across India. There's the Arvind Eye Care Hospital in South, which has practically excelled in becoming a champion of green hospitals. It has been documented here in India and internationally. And then there are many other examples. So what does it talk about? It says a very simple thing to remember. Law, triple M, we. What does law stand for? What nature gives us in abundance: light, air, water. And as Dr. Madan Gopal sir just now mentioned, that it's not about creating or managing the wastage, it's about preventing. So light, air and water, how do we really use this natural resource better? Then comes the 3 M's: material, machine, manpower. And then comes the V, which is wastage and energy. Now, if we take the example of how do we really manage this, then there are the 3R principles which globally have been accepted as the mode by which we conserve, by which we preserve, and how we utilize. The 3 R's are reuse, reduce, recycle. We will reduce the consumption of all the natural resources. We will reuse all the various kinds of resources that are generated so that we have maximum impact. And finally, we will use the technology of recycling so that we can have maximum impact from the resources that are generated. There is one very important element in the whole cycle that we talked about and which we generally tend to ignore, which is the manpower. The manpower is a very, very important element within our fight for a greener planet. It is about capacity building of the manpower. It is about ensuring that we cause least harm to our manpower, both through the various kinds of wastes that we generate, by the various hazards that we create in our hospital settings, and also by ensuring that we take the maximum productivity out of our manpower by having the proper guidance around the way that they are effectively used. So therefore, moving forward, a green hospital sounds a very complex thing, but if you look at it, and I hope I can later on talk a little bit about it, it's not that very complex. It is about ensuring that we respect the natural resources that we have by reusing, recycling, and reducing their wastage. We respect the materials that we use. We have efficient machines, efficient manpower, and we take care of our wastage and the energy that we are using in the hospitals. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Mr. Sanjay Kumar, to come back to you, as Dr. Madan Gopal laid out the basics, the 12 principles of green chemistry. Now, in specific, coming to the pharma sector in India, which are the initiatives that you would like to highlight and flag that are either currently in progress or you see on the horizon in the near future?
And I just want to thank Mr. Gopal and Mr. Ghosh who brought those points. And we are living both of them quite in practice. And our chairman, Dr. Krishna Prasad Chigurupati, who is the champion of bringing this up, and perhaps the first one in the pharmaceutical sector and the first one in the industry to kind of conceive this kind of concept. I just want to go back to Mr. Ghosh, and he spoke about law. The law where the nature has abundantly provided us few things, that is light, air, and water. I just want to pick up from my earlier chain of thought where I said the green hydrogen and how it has a potential to decarbonize. The entire concept is based on that law principle. So you have the solar energy, the light that nature has given, so much in abundance, and we are lucky in this part of the world to have quite a good access to it as against some of the European and some of the countries which is not in this region, is we have enough renewable energies to cater to our energy demand. And if the government policy goes on track, and we are actually on track to go far beyond than that, we have the energy problem sorted out. How do we use that energy to use the natural resources of water to get to green hydrogen using a technology called electrolyzer. So you have the green hydrogen. Then you use the air to capture the nitrogen to get to the green ammonia part of it. Now, green ammonia has a wider industrial application in the chemicals. Also, it has a direct implication in the agriculture sector, if I have to digress a bit. Solving for one of the biggest problem of carbon footprint coming from one segment, that is agriculture, which contribute to 18% of the global warming and its carbon footprint. Green ammonia is a precursor to many more chemicals that we ourselves use. From there, we can go to green methanol, we can go to green acetic acid. Using carbon capture, there are plenty of industrial feedstock. And we are one of the world's leading producers of paracetamol, one of the most essential medicines that humanity uses. And the second one is metformin. Just to give you a sense of numbers, these are consumed in hundreds, thousands of tons. And there are no other medicine who would come anywhere close to that. The combined carbon footprint of these two molecules itself is about 6.4 million metric ton, contributing to 2.5% of pharmaceutical. Within the pharmaceutical, there are 10,000s of molecules. Just these two molecules contribute to 2.5% of the carbon footprint. How we are addressing those is currently I am buying some of the key ingredients from China. We are going to make not just that key ingredient, that N-1, but going way back to the basic industrial chemical. That involves going deep down in the value chain to the basic chemicals like ammonia, acetic acid, methanol, etc. So that everything gets produced in one compound where the input is the green electricity. My partners having an electrolyzer there bringing green hydrogen. Within the scheme of things, there's no material incoming in the system. Everything that gets produced at the site, and that facility is going to come in a very short time in Andhra Pradesh. Going back to Mr. Gopal, you brought some interesting factor into that we actually are using. You brought the concept of atom economy, atom efficiency. What we follow in product development, we take ourselves much of a pride in being a manufacturing excellence company. And being the generic producer involves going and understanding the chemistry of the very mundane molecule that we are in and going splitting into many various parts, including the active ingredient, inactive ingredient, excipients that we use, solvent that we use, then the temperature and pressure condition that we spoke about. We use a unique, proprietary green score method, which has 6 categories and 38 subcategories across everything that 12 green chemistry principle Mr. Gopal spoke about, including addressing the hazards, the pollutant and the wastage that you generate, effluent that you generate. It's an end-to-end management of it. Now, you could very well say that one pharmaceutical company may not do all of that by itself. It needs a partner. So for the first set of the problem, we do have an energy partner. There are various things on the green chemistry that we want to do, and we want to partner with academia. In the previous panel discussion, Dr. Satish Reddy pointed out the importance of NIPER in the country. We, Granules, are very proud to embark upon a partnership with NIPER that we forged last year in October month for a sustainable formulation manufacturing. The vision is how can we get to a solvent-free, polymer-free, excipient-free pharmaceutical concept, and if we cannot get to the zero, can we replace them with a nature-based available material that we can. So there are plenty of things that is happening, and all of that principles, 12 green chemistry principles that Mr. Gopal spoke about, and some of the broader, very enlightening view that Mr. Ghosh brought, we are bringing that to fruition, bringing that to life at Granules India Limited, and going forward you will hear more from us on how we are trying to pioneer the sustainability in our strategy. Our purpose statement is, we are in the business of pharmaceutical. We are in the business of healing lives. but doing in a responsible manner so that we take care of not just healing lives, but healing the planet itself. And that's the objective with which we are working at Granules.
That's fascinating and inspiring. And given the scale of the pharma sector in this country, my next two questions, the first will be to Dr. Madan Gopal, and then I'll come back to you. So the question to Dr. Madan Gopal is, how really is the government preparing regulatory framework to address this, in a sense to stay ahead of the curve? And given that these are the regulatory approaches, the follow-up question to Mr. Sanjay Kumar would be that how really are we seeking to achieve a regulator-industry synergy? Dr. Madan Gopal, the regulatory framework that's emerging.
It's an evolving, Rajib, it's an evolving thing because we do have this Indian Bureau of Energy Efficiency as well as the Energy Conservation Building Course. And we are trying to see that on a voluntary basis, how many of the government institutions and other things, they are adhering to this course. That's one thing. In the energy efficiency also, there have been drives that instead of tube lights, you switch on to the more energy efficient means of this lighting and other things. We're trying to push for that. Second thing is, if you talk about the public sector hospitals, we do have Indian public health standards. Recently we have updated that talks about the green and clean hospitals, wherein we are trying to see that how the energy consumption in the healthcare institutions in the public sector, it is reduced. Besides that, we are trying to push people for adopting the more renewable kind of energies, that is the rooftop solar panels, because in the remote areas, that's a necessity because the power outages are there. And we see that how we can use the conventional energies which are available to the optimal. That's another thing which is happening. These are few of the initiatives. And looking at that now, there's a movement which it will pick up. That means how to promote the use of this renewable energy in our healthcare settings. That's one thing. Besides that, another thing is how to have medical devices which are energy efficient. Because if you look at the energy bill of any of the big hospitals like AIIMS and other things, it runs into crores. It's not lakhs. You see that how we reduce that, because that money which has been consumed for energy, for taking care of the energy bills, it is a subsidized energy for the public sector institution. But once it comes to the private hospitals, it's all billed to the patient. Because whatever is, they have to pay through the commercial thing. There is no subsidy for them, for the private hospitals. So all the thing has been transferred to the patients. And if we are started using the energy efficient mechanism, that's another way where we can at least reduce the patient right to the people. So another thing which we have brought down in the IPHS 22 guideline is all the big institutions, health institutions, should be having effluent treatment plants. This is apart from that, because reducing the waste is one thing, but in the medical setting, the waste is usually generated. Apart from having this effluent treatment plant, we are trying to ensure that running water is there, so that we are trying to see that how the wastewater is segregated into two areas and the same can be reused for some other purpose. That's the work is in progress in that direction. Besides that, to reduce the paper and other things, we are trying to see that the e-hospital systems are also being implemented so that the paper footprint and the other things can also be reduced. And we are trying to also see that how the sourcing of the material to the hospital is also centralized and see that less use of the chemical form of material is used in the hospital setting. These are few of the initiatives which we are taking. Apart from that, many laws are there, so that would be beyond the scope of our discussion, which would be directly or indirectly affecting this energy. But essentially what we are trying to focus in, how to have an energy efficient healthcare infrastructure in the country that is already been rolled out through the Indian Public Health Standard 2022. Besides that, how the waste which is generated, which is safe, which is safe, degradable, and not any harmful to the environment, before it is released into the environment, how we can make it safe. And we are trying to move towards the digital things. The digital thing also do have some carbon footprints, but not that hazardous than the papers and other things. We are trying, and apart from that, another last thing which I would be reiterating again is the sourcing of the material to the hospitals and everything. These are the few of the things which we are doing in the public sector.
So, in the specific context of the pharma industry, how do you see the industry and regulator synergy emerging?
So I think I'll use my time to prioritize what's the industry expectation from the policymakers. One is, we would like a frictionless access to renewable energy if the policy makers can provide for that. Electricity is a very complicated subject in India and caught between the subsidies to the farmers and a cross-subsidy being charged to the industry, and hence accessing renewable energy has been not so smooth affair for the industry, given the wheeling charges, etc., etc. And even if we want to enter into a power purchasing agreement, we'd like the government to espouse the industry cause, and so that's one part that I want to address. And second is, this green energy transition is incumbent upon how soon and how fast we can embrace the electrolyzer technology. I am aware that the government has taken this as a priority sector, but I think we need to accelerate, and we can create a multiple centers of excellence where this could be done at a very big scale. And these are very important. We are in a race here, and we are in race with our not so friendly neighbor in north, which has a very ambitious renewable energy goals. And the way they promote industry, we are in a competition with them. This is the right time for India to take on China on these things. At times, being a late mover in manufacturing could be a great advantage. India has skipped the manufacturing part of transition, gone from an agrarian-based economy to a service-led economy, and manufacturing has not realized its potential. I think that given the demographics of the country, we are just entered the 30-year period of a demographic dividend. It's important that we do not lose out on that, and we should become a developed country, we should become a rich country before we become old in 2053. And to be able to do that, what we need is to basically unleash the power of Indian demographic in the manufacturing sector. And that would lead to a lot of investment, both from domestic and foreign side, in the manufacturing sector. And the manufacturing sector, one of the key driver of the supply chain reconfiguration that is happening across the world is sustainability. And that's where we have a clear advantage as a nation state over China, which is already locked into the investment that they have. They can't be uncoupled and create a new factory from today. That's one thing that the government and the policy maker must take advantage of.
Let me interrupt you here, because I have a very specific probe to make, which is, given the existing scale and size of India's pharma industry, how really do these conventional companies make this journey and transition?
So one thing is
it's one thing to lay out a vision, but
right,
given that we are already so big.
So some of the disadvantages can be turned into advantages. For example, for a lot of material, and it has been documented in various studies during the COVID time, and that the supply chain disruption happened, that for 2/3 of our API manufacturing, we are dependent on China. That means that we do not have those manufacturing infrastructure in place, and we have a clean state to start with, being in a regular chemical product or even in the fermentation-based product. So we do have that. If the entrepreneurship and the government policy can come together to have those green investment, green shoot of investment, versus somewhere in the China which is getting locked into the old ways of method, that's an advantage. And that's what I call as a late mover advantage, as I alluded to.
Okay, fair enough. Dr. Ghosh, to come to you and to bring this to a more concluding note. How do we, given that we have heard so much about green chemistry, basic principles, applications, industry moves and imperatives, etc. So how do we locate green chemistry and sustainability within the larger One Health framework, which is the emerging global framework, which is also what G20 has been very strongly committed to, and which is really the thinking of the future as far as the broad public health in its broadest sense goes. So how do we locate green chemistry and sustainability within the One Health framework?
Great question, actually, Dr. Dasgupta, but this will take a considerable time for us to deliberate on. Primarily, first thing that we need to understand as to One Health, there are three things that we consider as the principles of One Health. One is around the protection of life, human life, animal life, and the life of the environment. The second is the preservation of what we have so that this can be accelerated. And the third is the promotion, that we do not only need to stay here, we need to grow better. I think we have already heard from Dr. Madan Gopal and you, sir, about how the various industries are taking forward various steps towards the greener environment by, as I had said in my earlier, deliberation about reusing, recycling, and reducing the wastage and all of that. But when it comes to One Health, I would really like to end with an anecdote for you. And I know that, the question that Dr. Dasgupta asked, I'm not fully answering that because that's a long conservation dialogue about how it needs to be done. There are very good examples, and I encourage you to read that. You were speaking about China, but there are some very good examples from South Korea. In South Korea, there are excellent examples how the government and the private sector industry are coming together in order to ensure that the One Health through the reduction, reuse, and the recycling is being preserved. There are wonderful examples about how one company is generating waste, which is becoming a resource for another company. And the infrastructure, the seed infrastructure, has been put by the government. This must be a very strong collaboration between the government and the private sector in order to promote, progress, and prevent any further loss or damage that we might have in terms of our healthcare. What I wanted to do is leave you with a story. When I was a medical officer way back in 1992 in a district called Alipurdwar in West Bengal, on Mother Teresa's birthday, the district magistrate had called for a competition, an art competition in schools, asking children to draw the hospitals and clinics or care centers where they would like their loved ones to get treatment. So there were fantastic drawings that came from various schools. One girl who stood first had drawn a glass building with a lot of natural light flowing into it. There were trees all around. There were animals like deer and cows and goats moving around, and there were neat beds inside and all of that. She was chosen as the first. And the district magistrate praised about, how she had talked about nature and how she had really built a very climate-friendly thing. Think of 92, this was not heard of. But when she was asked to speak as to how she felt, she said that I was not thinking of climate. I was not thinking of anything. I was just thinking of one thing. I had visited my grandfather a few days back in a hospital, and I found him to be very lonely. He was confined in a space where he was not being able to interact with one another. If we are talking about One Health, more than physical health, we need to also talk about mental health. And the impact of climate on mental health is huge. As we build our hospitals, as we build our industries, as we build our infrastructure, we need to understand that in public health, loneliness and mental health is becoming a very big issue. We talk about our people, we need to take care of that. So therefore, I want to leave with you this thought about One Health with respect to climate health, that think about physical, think about mental, think about social health, because otherwise we will not be able to progress towards healthy India.
Thank you very much. That brings this panel to a close, and thank you for your patient hearing. Thank you very much.